Looking at gameplay footage of Tekken today and comparing it to older games in the series, I think it's pretty safe to say the game has strayed quite far from its roots. It's not just Tekken though. The days of simplistic and more grounded fighting games are largely a thing of the past. Nowadays, it's just a commonplace for these games to be pretty over the top. Crazy particles and effects everywhere, tons of guest characters, installs and unique character mechanics. Whether you like the stuff or not, you can't deny it's had a huge impact on the growth of fighting games, specifically the Tekken series, and it is undoubtedly here to stay. Tekken 7 was a phenomenal success, saving the series after the failure of Tekken Tag 2, and it ended up selling over 12 million units. This is a huge number for fighting games. It really cannot be overstated how successful Tekken 7 was. And I think a lot of this success can be attributed to the modern direction Tekken started moving towards during this era. Despite this huge growth which we got through Tekken 7, lots of Tekken veterans are very hesitant to accept big changes, for pretty understandable reasons. Besides Virtua Fighter, Tekken was generally considered to be one of the more realistic martial art fighting games. Sure, we've always had dumb stuff. There'd be a bear who'd punch you in the face, occasionally a dinosaur would pop in, but it was still at least somewhat grounded compared to other fighting games like Street Fighter. People aren't jumping all over the air, people aren't throwing fireballs out of their hands. I think it was mostly the moveset. In real-life martial arts competition, you wouldn't just be limited to an 8-attack move list. You'd have a lot more options, and that's what makes Tekken characters so in-depth. Just the nature of Tekken's button-to-limb system and the huge amount of moves on each character made it feel a lot more like a real fight. With the DLC of Tekken 7, however, things started to change a lot. Not just visually, but mechanically. The second ever DLC character for Tekken 7 marked a pretty big moment for the Tekken series. Noctis Lucius Callum from Final Fantasy XV had a huge initial impact. Sure, Akuma and Geese were cool, but they were characters who were already from fighting games. Guest characters from other fighting game franchises aren't too uncommon. But Final Fantasy? The biggest RPG series on the planet? One that is incredibly popular and well known, both within the gaming niche, but also being pretty mainstream. Noctis' reveal exposed millions of fans who, before, would probably have never even considered playing a fighting game, now all looking towards Tekken and wanting to try the new character out. Tekken's developer, Bandai Namco, was very aware of this, and made sure the character's gameplay and moveset would help get as many newcomers playing as possible. Noctis, in my opinion, marked the true beginning of modern Tekken characters. This is a term that's been thrown around quite a lot by other creators and pro players, and it largely means this. Very simple to use characters who have multiple moves that allow them to skip a lot of the more complicated parts of Tekken and get right into winning and being effective with very little work. Now, to be fair, this didn't just start with Tekken 7's DLC. Specifically in Tekken 6, we saw a lot of examples of this, like with Bob and Lars. However, I think we've come so far that even characters like that pale in comparison to the modern Tekken characters of today. They just simplify so much of Tekken. Dealing with sidesteps can be frustrating for new players. Okay, let's give you a homing move that serves multiple purposes. Maybe one that's plus on block, a counter hit launcher, or wall splats, whatever. New players don't want to learn spacing? Okay, let's give you moves with full screen range and largely remove the need to ever space moves properly. Struggling to get in? Let's give you full screen approach tools. Basically, so many modern Tekken characters these days just have a couple moves that do everything rather than having to use multiple moves for specific situations. This is a trend that followed many characters in Tekken 7's DLC, with the most notable examples of course being Leroy and Falcon Rum, who are so incredibly easy and effective that many people opted to, or at least considered, banning the characters outright. There are other examples like Negan, Kunimitsu, and Zafina, and while these later characters would prove to be far more of an issue, I believe it all started with Noctis. While guest characters like Akuma and Geese Howard pretty much broke every Tekken rule in the book, at the very least these were difficult characters to pick up and use effectively. Noctis was not. In my opinion, Noctis is the true first weapon character archetype in Tekken. While there's undoubtedly been characters who have used weapons prior to Noctis in the series, it usually wasn't the core of their moveset using these weapons. Yoshimitsu has never had a full-screen normal hit launcher. Again, in my opinion, true weapon characters are defined first and foremost by having ludicrous range. They can pressure you nearly from full screen, and aren't just threatening you with 10 damage like a typical long-range projectile. No. We're talking counter-hit launchers, regular launchers, knockdowns, plus on-block attacks. Pretty much every attribute a Tekken move could have, just with infinite reach, meaning far less risk to the player throwing out the button. Not to mention, these weapon strikes are of course fully disjointed. Noctis was the first one I'm aware of to bring this style of attack to Tekken. For most of Tekken 7's lifetime, Noctis was one of the most hated characters in the entire game. It's funny looking back because, as many rules as Noctis broke, he is nothing compared to what we began to see in Tekken 8. But we'll get to that, don't worry. Let's first start here with the first Final Fantasy character. For a lot of people, Noctis was hated because of two moves. Royal Slash, Noctis' down back 1+2, was an insane range mid normal hit launcher, leading to Noctis' very strong combo damage and wall travel. It acted similarly to Heihachi's iconic Demon God Fist, being launch punishable on block, but having a ton of pushback, to the point where pretty much no characters could get a launch punish, let alone even a decent punish. This move initially had a mechanic of getting more homing properties the further you were standing away when the move was used. This was added in order to incentivize Noctis players to space their move from maximum range. Up close, it could be sidestepped relatively easily, but when used fully spaced, it would be almost impossible to sidestep. This move would be used alongside the second move, Delta Thrust, his down back 2. This was an infinite range power low, doing huge damage and knocking opponents down on normal hits, and giving a big follow-up on counter hits. And it was impossible to low parry due to it being a weapon strike. And this is it after it lost a ton of reach. Launch Noctis had about 25% more range, give or take, meaning it would hit from around here.
This move was balanced around being very slow, coming out at 24 frames, and being -19 on block, meaning you could get a launch punish. So the move wasn't really used in offline competitive play. Online play, however, is a whole nother story. Tekken 7 netcode was notoriously horrible, and there was almost always some level of delay playing online, making reacting to this much more difficult, even for strong players. But let's be honest, most of you guys are getting hit by snake edges anyway, so you were gonna get hit by this, even without the latency. Noctis players would stand very far away, mix up this low and the mid pseudo homing launcher. Was it a real 50-50? Not necessarily, but it was so incredibly annoying to deal with that he instantly became one of the game's most hated characters. These two moves are the first example of Noctis breaking core Tekken rules. Being on the pressure from this far away at this little risk to yourself was something we really have not seen before in Tekken. He didn't have advanced combos, none of this stuff was locked behind execution, you would just press a button and be able to control the entire screen. None of these mix-ups ever felt earned, it just felt cheap and boring. Beyond these two moves, Noctis had way more moves that allowed him to skip more typical Tekken rules, like his down forward 2. The down forward 2 launcher has been a staple of Tekken since its inception, a 15 frame punish that many characters have. There's always differences between them. Some characters down forward 2 would be safe, some characters down forward 2s would crush highs, but these moves always served a relatively similar purpose. Close range, quick launching tools. Noctis broke this rule. His down forward 2 was a 15 frame jumping forward launcher. This is the longest range down forward 2 in the entire game by a long shot. I might be missing something, so correct me if I'm wrong, but from my research, this is actually the longest frame 15 launcher in Tekken series history. And why is that significant when it comes to modern Tekken and breaking Tekken rules? Well, spacing and move pushback have always been a huge part of Tekken. There's a lot of moves that are designed around being unsafe on block, but having big pushback, meaning you aren't able to get a traditional launch, and instead have to recognize that they're using the move, recognize you've blocked it and been pushed back, and then apply your character-specific long-range punish.
Noctis gets to skip this entirely. He's able to press down forward 2 and launch punish every single move like this.
Pretty crazy unique strength for a character who was already considered very easy to play.
He had other stuff too, like his full screen projectile approach tool, again, something we hadn't really seen much in the Tekken series, being on the pressure from this far away and then suddenly teleport right in your opponent's face.
This move was also one of the absolute best whiff punishing tools in the entire game. Pretty much no matter where you were, if your opponent whiffed something, you could forward 2, get a ton of damage, and then be right in their face at a frame advantage. It was also for some reason safe on block at only -9. We really just hadn't seen stuff like this in Tekken prior to Noctis.
Kunimitsu would go on to later get the same move. It's just so jarring. It's stuff we've never seen in Tekken. Find me a clip of JDCR or Knee playing in a Tekken 5 tournament, and them suddenly being pressured by a 50-50 from 10 meters away, getting whiff punished from full screen because of his down forward 2, having to deal with a projectile. To be clear, I'm not making the argument that Noctis was an overpowered character. It's actually quite the opposite. He was considered mid-tier for a lot of the game's life because, despite these pretty game-breaking tools, he was designed around this. He was designed around being very lackluster up close, with weak, quick options when you're in his face. Ironically enough, Noctis actually became his strongest during the Season 3 patch, which nerfed all the moves I've told you about so far. The down back 1+2 lost its homing, the low lost a ton of reach and damage, and instead they opted to make his fundamental tools much stronger, like his forward 1+2 being a homing counter hit launcher, his up forward 4 another homing launcher, a 13 frame counter hit launcher. They gave him good crouch mix-ups. He was given a lot more standard tools as the game went on.
And by the end of Tekken 7's lifespan, he was actually considered one of the strongest characters, being consistently put in the top 15 in most pro players' tier lists, with some pros like Knee saying he's even theoretically top 5 in the game. Noctis slowly rising through the tier lists in the second half of Tekken 7's life can mostly be attributed to players like CBM and FDX doing exceptionally well with him, but of course can also be attributed to the major fundamental buffs he got. Dealing with old Noctis was not fun, but at least he had a core weakness. What happens when you remove this core weakness? Or give a character heavy buffs to alleviate said weakness, and make him a super simple, strong, all-around character? Well, when that happens, you have Tekken 8.
Fight! If you keep up with modern Tekken 8, I'm sure you've heard all about this. Patching out characters' weaknesses and changing their identity is something we are all too familiar with. And unfortunately, while Noctis was kind of the inoffensive start to this, it got about 10 times worse. Before any of the DLC for Tekken 8 released, this modern Tekken identity was very much present. Characters like Jin, who were previously the jack of all trades but master of none, suddenly became the master of everything.
Oh, Jin's core weakness has always been having weak range and weaker Oki, along with being heavily executionally demanding? Well, let's double the range on all of his moves. Let's give him some of the best Oki tools we've ever seen in Tekken. Let's remove the bulk of his execution. Let's make him as beginner-friendly as possible. Legacy characters like Law and Dragunov were super dumbed down, and became these insanely powerful modern Tekken characters.
Base game Victor was a brand new weapon character introduced, and he followed a lot of the same principles. He would use his fully homing while running 2 to approach at huge plus frames, while also being a counter hit launcher. He'd use his back 1+2 weapon strike, being an incredibly fast, infinite range, safe power crush heat engager, and of course his famous Explosion in heat, which originally was completely impossible to sidestep and had zero counterplay. He had plenty of Noctis stuff too, big range on his down forward 2, though not nearly as much as Noctis's, unparryable lows, all the stuff we've come to expect from sword characters. But he wasn't exactly breaking new ground. He wasn't breaking any major rules that hadn't been broken already. Are there really any more rules to break? I didn't think so. But then, well, Final Fantasy just had to strike again.
New challenger!
I'm here to leave them not. Any objections?
Clive Rusfeld!
I want to preface this by saying I like Clive. I was happy with his inclusion as I'm a big fan of guest characters and Final Fantasy XVI as a whole. I also think he's one of the most well-done characters in the game. Amazing visually, cool effects, great voice lines, and very fun to play. I've been playing him for the past few weeks before making this video, and after getting him to Tekken King fairly easily, I think I can speak about him with some level of credibility. This character is horribly designed from a competitive standpoint. Just like Noctis, Clive was designed to be very easy to play. Unlike Noctis, he wasn't originally built with a particular weakness in mind. Noctis had very good range, but only on a select few moves. Clive has god range on all of his tools. When he first came out, he was the recipient of the best move in the game, Prominence, his forward 1+2. This was a 2-hit sword strike that was essentially unsidesteppable, and combined with a second hit would never whiff. This would reach you no matter where you were. It was a mid-mid, completely safe on block heat engager. Oh, and it's also a full launcher if you heat dash out of it, because why not? This move was hilariously nerfed in 2 weeks, and is the only time in the history of Tekken 8 that we've gotten a character-specific hotfix like this. It became -12 and lost to tracking, and I think I speak for everyone when I say, thank God. The move is still good, just by nature of being an infinite range heat engager, meaning you can use it to easily whiff punish, block punish, and heat dash out of it for +5. But it's so much more reasonable now. That was the one move that got nerfed. Unfortunately, the rest of the stuff I'm about to tell you about remains unchanged. Executioner, his back 2, is a new archetype of move that was introduced with Tekken 8. This is the anti-keep out, zoning, plus on block, stance 50-50 enabler move. Yeah, that's a lot of attributes for one move, isn't it? This move, along with Deviljin's Shackle, are huge range disjoint highs that, on block, take you into stance at big plus frames for a guaranteed mix-up, and, on hits, guarantee a hugely damaging heat engager. They are of course both highs, so ducking and launching is always an option, although Deviljin's is specifically balanced around having a ton of recovery on whiff. If you whiff this or duck it, no matter where you are, even if you're very far behind, you can walk up and punish him. Clive's has much less recovery frames than Deviljin's, making it a lot safer, and his has the benefit of being fully homing. You heard me right, Clive's back 2 is completely homing. It'll track you to both directions. This move is already godly for conditioning your opponent and making them scared to respect you from long range, but this is just the start. Clive for some reason has one of the strongest pseudo steel pedal moves in the game, in his pile driver, the down 1+2. This is a long-range homing weapon attack that is for some reason safe on block. It's also a full counter hit launcher and gives a unique flip when hitting the ground, flipping your opponent around and resetting the Oki, forcing your opponent to get up at a disadvantaged position. Even after the million times chip damage has been nerfed in Tekken 8, it still does a chunky amount of chip damage considering what it is. Kazuya and Deviljin's steel pedals have always been pretty insane moves. I mean, think about it. Safe on block mids that are god Oki tools and full counter hit launchers. The moves do quite a lot, but they've always been balanced around having weak range and being sidesteppable. Clive Rosfield does not need to play by these rules. Sure, it's a little bit slower, but I think the range all but makes up for that. And if you want a quick option, for some reason Clive also has a back 4 Deviljin style steel pedal as well. Why did he need both? Ask Harada. The pile driver is arguably the best Oki tool in the entire game. Definitely a top 5 contender. So already we're seeing some pretty game-breaking moves, right? Well, let's talk about Wind Up, commonly known as Titan by the community, which is a Power Crush projectile. Remember Power Crush, the armored move mechanic introduced in Tekken 7, the one that veteran players pretty much universally hate? Now we're giving characters full-screened armored projectiles. This seems like a pretty gigantic rule that's being broken. This move was slightly nerfed, making it a little bit more consistent to punish, but the range is still insane, and if you space it well, you still will not get punished. And of course it wall splats, and it's not even launch punishable, only -14 on block. Great. It's like the developers saw how much people hated dealing with projectiles in Tekken 7, and hated dealing with Power Crush, and thought, let's combine the two. Maybe it's a personal thing, but this is one of the moves that frustrates me the most. Not even because I can't deal with it, but just because I'm so baffled why they would add a move like this into Tekken. But okay, let's move on.
We haven't broken enough rules yet, so let's break one of the biggest rules of Tekken so far. Remember projectiles? We just talked about one, but that one's a very unique case. I'm talking about the original Tekken 7 projectiles. That incredibly annoying mechanic that no one liked. Earlier, we talked about Noctis's projectile and his forward 2, being a full-screen safe approach tool and whiff punisher. Well, at least if you blocked this projectile, the Noctis player would completely lose their turn, being at a -9 frame disadvantage. Well, apparently, the Tekken devs thought this move didn't break enough rules, because in Season 2 of Tekken 8, Clive was given Deadly Embrace, a full-screen grappling hook projectile. But it's okay, just block it. Oh, what have they done? This is an unblockable, full-screen command grab. You can't break the throw, you can't block this, you can't beat it out with an attack, you can't do anything like that. This move does 17 damage of chip on block and leaves Clive right in your face at +3. So being -3 and taking 17 damage is your reward for blocking. Why, Namco? Why is this a thing? Why did anyone at the balance team think this was even a remotely reasonable move to give Clive? He was already a top tier before Season 2. Why? Oh, but it's okay, just sidestep it, it has no homing. Of course, you can cancel it into stance halfway through the animation, giving you no time to react, and then jump in your face from across the screen with his million homing options. Lovely. We are unfortunately not even halfway through all of this guy's game-breaking tools.
Clive has a move called the Knight's Gambit in his forward 3. being an orbital-like move with obscene range. This gives him one of the best whiff punishing tools from long distance in the game, even though he already had the previously mentioned forward 1+2 and back 2, which were both exceptional whiff punishing tools. I guess he needs everything. He has a ton of other amazing long-range moves too.
His sidestep 2 is a long-range sword swipe that no one seems to be talking about.
Full screen range mid that's safe on block and can be hit confirmed into the 1+2 heat engager follow-up. Remember hit confirms and counter hit confirms? A mechanic that typically requires great reaction time. It's some kind of skill expression. Well, Clive's sidestep 2 might have the biggest hit confirm window I've ever seen in Tekken. You can wait up to 30 frames to visually see the first hit being connected and add in the second. 30 frames! Why did he need this? But what about other long-range safe poking options? Well, Clive's forward 2-2 string is one of the best moves in the game. This is an infinite range mid-mid string that's completely safe on block. It's technically not homing, but to step both hits you really need perfect timing. It's very difficult to do. This string will be your main poke option when playing the character, coming out at 15 frames. Why does a character like this have a full screen poke option? Who knows? When you're pressuring with this move and you see your opponent has pressed into it, you can very easily confirm into the final 2 hits for a 40 damage heat engager. Just like the sidestep 2, you have a crazy amount of time to confirm this, and because of the Season 2 UI changes now showing counter hit on the screen, it's even easier to confirm into. Almost no skill expression here. Okay, but it's not that broken. Just don't disrespect him when he uses the forward 2-2. It is -9 after all, he gives up his turn. Well, for some reason, he can also go into his Phoenix Shift stance after the second hit and apply a mix-up. Even though he's at -5, you're always going to be conditioned to hold block against this string, because the risk of the final hit is always present. Oh, and then he pops heat, and this move becomes even better. He gets a new follow-up mid that is +2 on block in perfect Tekken 8 fashion. The move can also be charged and is a full guard break, leading to a wall splat for 1,000,000 damage at the wall. Because in Tekken 8, everyone needs a guard break. We thought, we're gonna add heat, we're gonna make this the most aggressive Tekken system we've ever seen, and then we're gonna punish you for blocking even more by giving every character guard breaks. Why? Namco just really hates the idea of you holding block.
In Season 2, he was given a move called Staff of Judgment, because Namco clearly thought, this guy doesn't have enough long-range pressure tools. This is a huge range sword strike that when the season first came out, it was +4 on block. It's since been nerfed to only be +3 on block, but it's still ridiculous. Why would a character like this need a long-range plus on block mid? It also does 50 damage on counter hits. 50 damage.
But okay, Clive's long-range moves seem pretty godly. It's funny because Noctis was considered to have great long-range options, but compared to Clive, he is nothing. Even after all this though, having the best long range in the game by far, surely to compensate, they made his up-close options bad, right? The same way they did initially for Noctis before they buffed him. Surely there's some form of character design here. Well, no. Nowadays, characters aren't allowed to have weaknesses or identities. Up close, Clive has the Phoenix 1+2, and this move is a contender for the best move in the entire game. A 13 frame mid heat engager that is safe on block. Do you know why 13 frames is so significant? This is the standard speed of a down forward 1. You know, the universal low risk, low reward fast mid check? Well, he has that, except it's low risk and major reward, being a heat engager leading into his insanely strong heats, and you can also heat dash out of it for like 50 damage. Why? It's one of the absolute most spammable moves in the entire game, and this alone makes his up-close utility godlike. Just like most down forward ones, it can be sidestepped, but come on, that doesn't matter. He also has his 2-2 string, being a 12 frame safe high mid, which has a third mid follow-up that for some reason is also safe on block, and has a unique damaging animation on counter hit. The 2-2 also has a counter hit confirmable extension for high damage, and of course, can be cancelled into stance, only putting him at -1. And we haven't even got into his stance yet. This stance is actually viable as an approach tool, as you're able to cover a ton of distance with his Phoenix Shift. In his Phoenix Shift, he has a fully homing multi-hit heat engager in his 1+2 that is of course completely safe on block. People don't talk about this enough, but this move is also one of the best heat engagers in the game. Why is it fully homing? Why does it have so much range? You can avoid the first 3 hits and still get clipped by it. Why is it safe on block? He has an unseeable Hell Sweep for 30 damage, of course being launch punishable, but it is a risky option you have. He also has a safer low that is only minus 13 on block and guarantees a heat engager on counter hits while also being incredibly evasive, crushing all highs. He has a power crush option. He has a fast safe mid option. This fast safe mid option can be followed up with another hit giving him +4, a +4 mid string. He also has a slow, fully homing mid that gives +8 on block, and it's like, did he really need all this? I get that they knew a lot of newcomers would be coming in from Final Fantasy, but you don't have to baby them this much. What game is Clive even playing at this point? This isn't Tekken. It's not even Soul Calibur. I don't know how to describe Clive's playstyle. No other character in the game has a safe mid 13th frame heat engager. No other character in the game has a full screen power crush projectile. No other character in the game has the best long distance pressure while simultaneously also having some of the most insane close range tools we've seen. No other character in the game has a stance that instantly teleports them forward acting as an approach tool with an infinite range homing safe on block mid heat engager. Watch pro Clive players, they will approach with this all the time. People will talk about his main weakness being either bad lows or his combo damage. His lows are perfectly fine. Down 1 is a quick, fully high crushing low for poke damage, being only minus 13. His full crouch down forward 2 is a great weapon strike low, doing good damage, only being minus 12 and being impossible to low parry. It also has great range, of course, being a sword. And this combined with his 19 frame down back 4, which is a full counter hit launcher, and his high crush low out of stance that covers a ton of range and is relatively safe. Oh yeah, and he also has the previously mentioned risky higher damage Hell Sweep, which gets enhanced when you're in heat mode. Does this sound like a character with bad lows? His combo damage is admittedly definitely lower than most other characters, but I think that's more of an issue of damage being way too high in general than his being low. Getting 80 damage from a combo is perfectly fine. It's pretty crazy how now we're living in a world where 80 damage is considered very low. I haven't mentioned it up until now, but Clive also has an install, and to give the developers credit, this is the only truly balanced install in the game. Every time he uses a red sword attack, he builds up his Zantetsuken meter. At level 3 and 5, he powers up one of his moves, which usually acts as an enhanced combo ender. At level 5, the move is basically a second rage art, meaning any combo you do if you end it with this will do well over 100 damage, and delete all recoverable health. You can only use this once per match, and you do have to sacrifice a lot of damage throughout the match to build up this meter in the first place, but even then, it's really not that difficult to build meter. If you want to do it, you can do it in 2 rounds. So Clive only having 80 damage combos, but then getting 1 combo a game, usually on the final round when it matters the most, that does 125 damage, doesn't exactly convince me that this is a character with low damage. I want to say now that despite the way I've been talking about Clive, this isn't even about character strength. While I do think he's undoubtedly top 5 in Season 2, I'm not here to make the argument that he's super broken and he's dominating the game. That is not the point. The point is that following Tekken 7's DLC, starting with Geese Howard and Noctis, our first guest character in Tekken 8 is still having the same issues. It feels like Namco has learned nothing. He oversimplifies the game, breaks many conventional rules of Tekken, and is designed to be so incredibly easy that anyone can pick up and play him and immediately beat everyone. He's a terribly designed character from a competitive perspective. Again, did Namco learn nothing? Did they learn nothing from Leroy and Fulcrum Rum's launch? I know I started the video talking about Noctis, but honestly, Noctis was never the problem. It's the fact that this started with Noctis, continued with the other DLC characters, and here in Tekken 8, I feel like Clive is an amalgamation of every problem most of the DLC characters had. The Tekken community doesn't hate guest characters because they don't want the series to grow, or they only want original Tekken characters. They hate guest characters because so far in the Tekken series, every single guest character has been problematic. Seriously, Noctis was one of the most annoying characters to fight. Then we got Negan, who had most of the same issues as Noctis, being incredibly easy and effective to play and being a weapon character. Akuma and Geese Howard, who again, while they were difficult, weren't even playing Tekken, they were playing their complete own game. And now our first guest character is Clive in Tekken 8, and we're doing this again. We don't mind guest characters. We don't even mind guest characters with unique mechanics. It's cool to make these characters feel different. And I'm sure Final Fantasy fans think he's really cool. I think he's really cool. But if you're gonna make characters who break so many rules, you need to balance them around the breaking of these rules. Base Noctis was a great example of this. God League tools from far away, but weak up close. If Clive had everything he had right now, but lost all of his up-close pressure, then that would actually be the start of a design philosophy with him. Great long range, bad at close range. Okay, we could work with that. Although, with where Clive is now, even if he lost the 1+2 up close and the 2-2 string, he would still be godly. We're gonna need a lot more work than that. Bandai Namco needs to seriously rethink how they're designing DLC characters if they want Tekken to be a healthy competitive game. They've had a huge reality check recently with the community. They realized that the community is no longer putting up with their garbage. We do not like the direction the game is going, and we are being very vocal about it. They've made some good steps, but they have to nail this with the DLC characters. A lot of people think that the DLC characters in Tekken 7 single-handedly ruin the game. The last thing you want your competitive fighting game to be called is pay to win. And it sucks because up until Clive, all 3 DLC characters were pretty well balanced. Nobody had an issue with these characters.
But then you add a guest character, which a lot of people in the Tekken community were already not happy with, considering the PTSD Tekken 7 gave us, and it's the exact same thing all over again.
At least in my opinion. But there you go. There's my rant about Final Fantasy. Again, I shouldn't really say Final Fantasy, it's more specifically Clive. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments how you feel about Final Fantasy characters and guest characters as a whole in Tekken. I'll be down there chatting with you guys as always. Thanks again for watching my video. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel, as it lets me know that you want to see more videos like this. I'm interested in changing the layout of my content, focusing more on longer, higher quality videos like this, rather than shorter videos. So if you'd be interested, make sure to subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy.